The medical station Orion 9 floated quietly near the edge of the galaxy. It was one of the biggest hospitals in known space. Every day, doctors and nurses from many worlds worked there together. Nurse Lyra was one of them. She belonged to the Varine species, known for their calm minds and perfect medical skills. In her 6 years of service, she had treated hundreds of patients from dozens of species, but today was different. Lyra stood in front of the patient list and looked at the final name. The screen showed only one word that caught her attention immediately. Human. Lyra frowned slightly. She had heard stories about humans before. Most of them sounded impossible. Some said humans could survive injuries that killed other species instantly. Others claimed humans kept fighting even after their bodies should have stopped moving. She believed those stories were only military legends. A soft alarm suddenly echoed through the room. Emergency patient arriving in Bay 7. Lyra quickly walked toward the emergency room. The doors opened and 2 security officers pushed in a medical pod. Inside was a human male covered in blood and dust. His breathing was heavy, but his eyes were still open. Lyra froze for a second. No patient with injuries like these should still be awake. The monitor beside the pod flashed warning signs: broken ribs, internal bleeding, severe muscle damage, a damaged lung. The list seemed endless. One of the officers looked at Lyra nervously. "Pirate attack near Sector 12, he said. His shuttle exploded. Lyra looked back at the human. "How long ago?" "Almost 2 hours. Lyra stared at him in disbelief. 2 hours. Most species could not survive 10 minutes with injuries like these. The human slowly turned his head toward her. His face was pale, but somehow he smiled. "Am I late for something?" he asked weakly. The officers laughed nervously. Lyra did not. She immediately activated the scanners. Blue lights moved across the human's body. The machine checked every organ, every bone, every drop of blood. Then the scanner suddenly stopped. A warning message appeared on the screen. "Unknown biological response detected." Lyra blinked. That message had never appeared before. She restarted the scan. The same warning returned. Her hands moved faster across the controls. Maybe the machine was damaged. Maybe the sensors were broken. But every result remained the same. The human's body was doing something impossible. His damaged tissues were slowly repairing themselves. Not fast enough to heal completely, but fast enough to keep him alive. Lyra stepped back from the screen. "No species can regenerate during active trauma," she whispered. The human opened one eye. Humans can be annoying like that. Lyra looked at him in surprise. "You know what is happening?" The human gave a weak laugh. "Our doctors call it survival instinct." Lyra had studied survival instinct before. Every species had one. But this was different. This looked more like war between the body and death itself. More doctors entered the room and studied the scans. Their expressions quickly changed from confidence to confusion. One doctor checked the machine. Another checked the patient's records. A third doctor simply stood silent while staring at the monitor. Finally, one of them spoke. "The scanner is correct." The room became quiet. Lyra looked at the human again. He was losing blood. His lung was damaged. His heart rate was unstable. Yet somehow his body refused to stop fighting. As if every cell inside him had made its own decision. Survive, no matter the cost. Suddenly another alarm appeared on the monitor. Heart rhythm failure detected. The human's heartbeat became slower, then slower, then slower again. Lyra's eyes widened. The heart monitor showed a flat line. The room exploded into movement. "Cardiac arrest!" Doctors rushed forward. Medical drones activated instantly. Lyra prepared the emergency injectors. But before anyone touched him, the monitor beeped. Once, twice, 3 times. The line moved again. The heartbeat returned. By itself. Every person inside the room froze. One doctor slowly looked at the monitor. Another checked the patient's pulse manually. The readings were real. The human heart had restarted on its own. The human opened his eyes and looked around the room. "Why is everyone staring at me?" he asked quietly. No one answered. Lyra felt cold fear move through her body. For the first time in her medical career, she was not looking at a patient. She was looking at a biological mystery that the galaxy did not understand. And somewhere deep inside her mind, one question appeared. If a wounded human could do this, what could a healthy human do? Outside the room, the hospital computer quietly updated the patient's file. Warning: Human biology event recorded, classification level increased. Galaxy Medical Council notification sent automatically. The emergency room stayed silent after the human's heart started beating again. Nurse Lyra looked at the monitor again and again, hoping the machine was wrong. But every number was correct. The human's body had restarted his heart without any medical help. None of the doctors in the room had ever seen something like this before. Fear slowly replaced their confusion. Lyra quickly opened the Galactic Medical Database. She entered the word human and waited for the records to appear. Thousands of reports filled the screen within seconds. Most of them came from military hospitals and deep space colonies. Many files carried warning signs and restricted access symbols. Lyra's hands stopped moving for a moment. She opened the first report carefully. It described a human soldier who survived after losing almost half of his blood. Another report showed a human engineer who remained alive for 20 minutes after his heart stopped. A third report described a miner who walked 3 kilometers with a broken spine to save his team. Lyra could hardly believe what she was reading. The reports continued for hours. Human bones healed faster than most species. Human muscles kept working even after serious damage. Their brains could stay active during extreme pain. Their immune systems fought diseases that destroyed entire civilizations. Every new file sounded less like science and more like myth. One warning message appeared on her screen in red letters. It was written by the Galactic Medical Council many years earlier. The message was short but clear. Human patients may display unexpected survival responses under life-threatening conditions. Below it was another sentence that worried Lyra even more. Medical staff are advised not to panic. Lyra slowly looked toward the patient room. Through the glass window, she saw the human sitting up in his bed. Only 1 hour earlier, he had been close to death. Now he was asking a medical drone for water and food. The drone looked almost confused while serving him. Even the machines were not ready for humans. The human noticed Lyra standing outside the room. He raised his hand and smiled politely. Lyra entered the room carefully and checked his monitor again. His blood pressure was improving. His breathing was becoming normal. The damaged lung was already showing signs of repair. None of it made any sense. "My name is Ethan," the human said calmly. "You have been staring at me for 10 minutes. Lyra looked embarrassed for a second. "Your body should not be doing this," she answered honestly. Ethan smiled again and looked at the ceiling above him. "That is what the pirate medic said before his ship exploded," he replied quietly. Lyra was not sure if he was joking. Before she could ask another question, the hospital light suddenly turned red. A loud alarm echoed through every hallway of Orion 9 station. Doctors and nurses immediately stopped working and looked toward the ceiling speakers. The emergency voice repeated the same message again and again. "Security alert, unknown vessel approaching the station." The room became silent once more. Lyra walked toward the window and looked outside. Far away in the darkness of space, a damaged black ship slowly appeared on the scanners. The security officers began running through the corridors. Something was terribly wrong. Ethan slowly stood beside his bed despite his injuries. He looked at the scanner screen for only a second before his expression changed completely. The smile disappeared from his face. His eyes became serious. "I know that ship," he said quietly. Lyra turned toward him immediately. Ethan looked directly at her. "The pirates from Sector 12 found me." Outside the station, the unknown ship continued moving closer. The warning alarms continued to echo across Orion 9 station. Security officers rushed through the halls while emergency doors slowly closed around the medical wing. Nurse Lyra looked out of the window at the dark pirate ship moving closer to the station. It was heavily damaged, but it was still dangerous. The station commander ordered all civilians to move to safe areas immediately. Ethan stood beside his medical bed and watched the scanners carefully. His face became serious as the pirate ship appeared larger on the display. Lyra could see that he recognized it immediately. This was not fear on his face. It was experience. He had seen these pirates before and he knew exactly what they wanted. "They are not here to attack the station," Ethan said quietly. "They are here for me." Lyra turned toward him in surprise. Ethan explained that he had been carrying important navigation data when the pirates attacked his shuttle. The information showed hidden trade routes used by several colonies. If the pirates got that data, thousands of people could die. Lyra looked at his injuries and shook her head. "You can barely stand," she said. Ethan looked down at the bandages covering his chest and gave a small smile. "Humans are good at working while injured," he replied. Before Lyra could answer, another explosion shook the station walls. The pirates had started firing. Red lights flashed across the room as the security system activated. The station commander announced that enemy boarding ships had entered the outer docking ring. Panic quickly spread through the hospital. Patients were moved into protected rooms while doctors rushed through the halls. Some species were already preparing evacuation ships. Ethan walked slowly toward the equipment locker near the wall. Lyra watched him open it and remove an emergency security vest. His movements were slow because of the pain, but they never stopped. Every step looked difficult, yet he continued moving forward. Lyra could not understand how his body was still obeying him. "You need rest, not battle," Lyra said firmly. Ethan looked at her for a moment before answering. "If they reach the data core, this station becomes their weapon." His voice stayed calm and steady. There was no anger in his words, only responsibility. Suddenly, the hospital lights went dark for several seconds. The backup power system activated immediately, but the message was clear. The pirates were already inside the station. Far away, the sound of blaster fire echoed through the metal corridors. The battle had begun. A frightened young patient from another species started crying nearby. The child held tightly to his mother's arm as explosions shook the walls again. Ethan slowly walked toward them despite his injuries. He knelt beside the child and gave him a reassuring smile. "Everything will be okay," he said softly. Lyra watched the scene in silence. The human had broken ribs, internal injuries, and severe blood loss. Yet instead of protecting himself, he was calming others. Most species protected themselves first during danger. This human seemed to think differently. A security officer suddenly entered the room in panic. "The pirates are heading toward Medical Bay 7, he shouted. The officer looked at Ethan with wide eyes. "They know exactly where you are." The room became silent. Ethan slowly stood up and tightened the security vest around his chest. Then he looked toward the hallway leading out of the medical wing. His expression did not change. "If they want me," he said quietly, "then they will have to come through me first." A few seconds later, heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor outside the room. The battle inside Orion 9 station was finally over. Security teams moved through the corridors to make sure no pirates remained behind. Doctors and nurses returned to the injured patients waiting for treatment. The emergency alarms slowly became silent again. But inside Medical Bay 7, everyone was focused on one patient. Ethan lay unconscious on the medical bed while machines surrounded him. His injuries were now worse than before. The scans showed more broken bones and fresh internal damage. Several doctors believed his body would finally give up. Nurse Lyra stood beside the bed and watched the monitors carefully. Hours passed slowly inside the room. One by one, the doctors left to help other patients across the station. Only Lyra remained beside the human patient. She looked at the monitor every few minutes, expecting the numbers to fall again. Instead, they slowly improved. The damaged lung started repairing itself once more. His heartbeat became stronger with every passing hour. Even the internal bleeding began to stop without surgery. Lyra checked the scanners 3 separate times to make sure there was no mistake. The machines continued showing the same answer. The human body was fighting again. The station commander entered the room later that morning. He looked at Ethan and then toward Lyra. "Will he survive?" he asked quietly. Lyra looked at the medical report spread across the screen beside her. Then she gave an answer she never expected to say. "I think surviving is what humans do. Almost as if he had heard her words, Ethan slowly opened his eyes. He looked around the room for several seconds before noticing Lyra standing beside him. His first question was not about his injuries or his pain. Instead, he looked toward the window. "Did everyone make it?" he asked. Lyra nodded slowly. "The station is safe." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment and smiled. Relief appeared on his face almost immediately. The safety of strangers mattered more to him than his own injuries. Once again, Lyra found herself unable to understand humans completely. Several days later, Ethan finally prepared to leave Orion 9 station. His injuries were healing faster than anyone expected. Before boarding his transport ship, he stopped near the medical entrance. Lyra stood beside him as workers repaired the damage left by the battle. "Thank you for saving us," she said quietly. Ethan smiled. "I only did what anyone else would do." Lyra almost laughed at those words, because after everything she had seen, she knew that was not true. After Ethan's ship disappeared into deep space, Lyra returned to her office and opened her final report. The Galactic Medical Council had requested her personal observations about human biology. She stared at the screen for several minutes before finally typing her answer. "The galaxy fears human biology for the wrong reason." She stopped for a moment and continued writing. "Humans are not terrifying because they are stronger than other species. Humans are terrifying because they refuse to surrender. When logic fails, when strength fails, and when hope fails, humans continue fighting." The report was sent to every major medical center in the galaxy. Years later, every new nurse studying human medicine would read the same final sentence written by Nurse Lyra of Orion 9 station. Heavy footsteps moved closer through the dark corridor outside Medical Bay 7. Nurse Lyra could hear metal boots hitting the floor with perfect rhythm. The pirates had arrived faster than anyone expected. Security officers quickly took positions near the doors. The air inside the room felt heavy and cold. A loud explosion shook the entrance only seconds later. Smoke filled the hallway as the outer door crashed onto the floor. 3 armed pirates entered the corridor with plasma rifles ready. Their leader scanned the room carefully before speaking. His voice was calm but dangerous. "Hand over the human," he ordered. The security officers raised their weapons immediately. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Then blaster fire suddenly filled the corridor with bright flashes of light. Patients screamed as guards returned fire from behind the walls. The battle inside the hospital had begun. Lyra looked toward Ethan in shock. He should have stayed behind cover with the other patients. Instead, the injured human slowly stepped toward the entrance. His breathing was heavy, and pain was clear on his face. But he continued moving forward without hesitation. One pirate aimed directly at Ethan and fired. The shot hit the wall beside him, sending metal pieces across the room. Ethan grabbed a fallen security shield and pushed a frightened nurse behind cover. Another blast struck the shield and threw him backward. Even then, he stood up again. Lyra could hardly believe her eyes. The human's injured body should have collapsed by now. His heart had already stopped once that day. He had broken ribs and internal bleeding. Yet somehow he was still moving toward danger instead of away from it. The pirate leader stared at Ethan with frustration. "Stay down, human," he shouted. Ethan wiped blood from his face and looked directly at him. "That was the plan," he answered quietly, "until you came after my people." The words surprised Lyra. My people. The hospital staff came from many different worlds and species. Ethan had known them for only a few hours. Yet he was willing to risk his life for them without a second thought. Lyra had never seen loyalty like this before. Another pirate rushed toward the room entrance. Ethan moved forward and slammed the security shield into him, sending the attacker crashing into the wall. The impact reopened one of Ethan's wounds immediately. Blood ran down his arm, but he ignored it completely. The pirate leader finally stepped back toward the corridor. Station security forces were arriving from the lower levels. The pirates had lost their advantage. One by one, they started retreating toward their ship. The battle was finally ending. Ethan lowered the shield and took one step forward, then he collapsed. Lyra rushed toward him as medical teams entered the room. His pulse was weak but still present. The monitors showed fresh internal injuries and dangerous blood loss. The doctors prepared emergency treatment immediately. As Lyra looked at the unconscious human, she remembered the warning inside the medical files. Do not panic around human survival responses. For the first time, she understood why that warning existed. The galaxy was not afraid because humans were strong. The galaxy was afraid because humans refused to stop. Even when logic said they should, even when their bodies said they should, even when death itself was waiting for them. The human body simply answered with one word: